Forge Father Loki. And to do this, he granted me access to his Mark III models, as you can see. And right now we're working on a Delegatus. It's one of the consoles for the Space Marines. It's for if you've got a small detachment, or for example, you might play a small match with a friend, but you still want to bring a Rite of War. This is your cheapest guy you can get and bring a Rite of War. There's no model representation for him, so that's why we figured we'd have a go at him. We wanted to give him some cloth. And since Forge Father Loki already asked me how I did my cloth, I figured it'd be a good idea to show you guys. I have a very straightforward approach that I use every time, and we actually start with a simple plane. Usually I pick a spot where I want it to be a little bit, like there, and then we add a plane. So let's make it a little bigger and move it a little out. Actually, maybe to show you guys what I use, it's easier to show you with a cube first, just to show you what bevels do. I generally work with modifiers, and you can create a bevel by going into edge mode and then using the bevel section over here, and then just drag this out, and then you can give this any number of segments. And this is very controlled, but it's a step-by-step approach. What I prefer to use is modifiers for this, which is the bevel modifier, which does this with a simple set of numerics, if you will. So here I can have the same segment in it, but it allows me a lot more control. And especially when I also use this to make armor panels and such that have a bit more of a smooth curve shape to it. Like you saw on the previous release with the big robot, with the jetpack. And this modifier gives you a lot of control because you can limit it to an angle. And usually I start at 45. And what that means is, if I start to move these around and I go beyond 45, it will lose the bevel, see? And if you add a subdivision surface to this, you can see you can get a really smooth curve, really fast, with a lot of control. If you don't want to have this, you can easily drag it around to get the shape you want. And this also works really well on capes, but I want to show you on a simple cube first, so that you know what I'm talking about. But you'll see that with the cape it becomes a little bit more complicated, because we want a general shape that's not too high poly, that we can drag around to create the base shape of the cape or the cloak or the loincloth or whatever. And for me what helps is I usually subdivide this in a number of 2. So that was just right click, subdivide, and then yeah, you can adjust the numerics over here. But this just gives you base a few vertices to work with, and as you can see, this is a very low poly, and that's the intention, because we'll add to this a solidify modifier, and usually I use this at about at least 1.2 or something. Like I discussed earlier, you don't want to make your capes too thin for miniatures, so let's go for 1.5 for now. We can always change this numerics over here, because you know, with 3D printing, resin can be a little bit brittle and you don't want stuff to snap off, so make sure it's thick enough. So
can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can hear you.
Oh, shit. I know that. I'm on the PC. Alright, guys. Continue.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to interrupt me, or if I'm going too fast. So once we have the thickness set, we'll go to the next modifier, which is the bevel I talked about earlier. And we're going to experiment with these settings, but for now we're going to set the segments to 2, as you can see. That's happening right now. There's 2 segments instead of 1. And we're going to limit it again at an angle of 45. Now the reason I'm doing this, actually let's leave the segment at 1 for now, because that makes the cape a little bit smoother. Because if we add a subdivision divider over this, and we probably need to amp this up a little bit more. Let's keep it at 2 for now. Now we can start dragging these around, and as you can see, you get a really smooth shape quite easily. While still having a pretty strong edge because of the bevel. It's actually telling the smoothening that there's a corner with several faces on there, as you can see in the bevel modifier. If we just turn off this one for now, this is making sure that there's 2 edges here, so the subdivision doesn't become like a complete smooth corner. And this gives the painter of the miniature a little something to work with an edge highlight or something. Now this is the next step, which is the most important step, is actually finding the shape, and that's the difficult part. So I start by positioning it a little bit where I want it to be. And what I'm going to do, I discussed this with Forge Father Loki already. I'm going to try to make this cloak so that it is only like a half cape, a little bit Roman style, and it will attach behind the backpack, and then it will curve over the shoulder. And I already positioned this here for a reason, because this is where it's going to end up, and then and then it's going to flow down. So to do that, we're going to move it against the shoulder pad here, and also note that it's perfectly fine to have some clipping here. We'll fix that later in the step where we clean up the entire model, which is actually just throwing it into what's it called again? I think it's 3D Builder. Yeah, 3D Builder. Yeah, and then it will calculate any problems and fix that for you. So
it might be worth mentioning that there are rumors that Windows might be removing that in the next, so like new PCs going forward. So if you're watching this in the future and 3D Builder isn't there, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what to tell you.
Oh, that's good to mention. But there are other programs that do the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we can definitely find something.
Lychee's really good.
Is it? I haven't used that feature yet from Lychee.
Oh, no, yeah. It just comes up when you put any model in, so it's pretty quick to just let it get started and then come back in 5 minutes and it's done. Depending on how complicated the model is. But it's a choice.
Yeah, and probably...
suggestions?
Sorry?
You got any other suggestions about software they could use?
No, I've actually just been using this for this very feature, so it's definitely good to hear some more options. So thank you for that. So now let's get on to the shape of the cloth we're going to make. It can be real easy because we've made it so low poly. It's very easy to just double click an edge and you immediately grab the whole edge. And I just usually do this on feel, like you're going to find the right spot. And we're going to do it a little bit crude at first, and we can add more lines or vertices if we need them. So I just double click all of them and move them around a little bit just to get the base shape there. And you can see that this bevel modifier is still only working over here. But I'll tell you when it comes up, when we're going to need to use that bevel modifier to our advantage, because I've added it for more than a reason than just the straight edge that we've got here now. So I'm trying to get this shape done. We're going to need an extra edge, so I'm going to press Control Extrude, which is you could also just click here, and then with a right click I drag it out just in the view screen. You don't always need to use the cursor tool. You can also use your screen. If you just right click here, it will just use your screen as a point of origin, if you will, to drag the extrude from, which is a very easy way to do something by feel. So I'm trying to get this down here, and I'm going to go into orthographic view so I get a little bit better view to get it properly behind here. Okay. Let's go back to perspective. And then you can drag this around until it finds the right shape. And here you can see how I can use the bevel to my advantage, because what the cloth would do here is it would find a natural way to flow around this shoulder pad. And we have to exaggerate that a little bit on a miniature because these are the things that you're going to want to see when you're painting it. So we're going to get the right location over here just by feel again. Just right mouse with the move tool selected. And if we drag it out a little more, you will see that the bevel will snap in, see? And this will immediately give us a good starting position. And it's still very low poly. We're going to crank that up later. But for now, we're just going to try to find the general shape that this piece of cloth would have in this situation. So I'm going to drag this vertex over here. And I think this should be a little bit more in and down. So I'm just right clicking in my viewport. And I want this to be in the shoulder pads so it will be easier to print. So I'm going to make sure that it touches the shoulder pad at every time. I think it should flow a little bit in, so I'm going to select this face right here and right click and move it in. And you can see right now the bevel is telling me that it just lengthened this line, so we don't want that to happen. So you need to move some more pieces around so that it gets cancelled. And this is actually a bit too low, so let's move that up over here. So it follows the edge of the shoulder pad a little bit better. Right now I think we could probably make this a little bit longer, but that would look cool. So I'm just going to grab the bottom edge here again. Let's move this a little bit up first. So the bottom edge, Control E and right click, drag it down. And then we get a little bit more shape to it. I think this is a nice length. Nothing too fancy because he's not a super boss of a character. So
yeah,
we have to be careful not to make him too extravagant. Yeah.
He's respectable, but he's no chapter master.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's why I wanted to go with the sort of half cape thingy. Now what I think is fun about the bevel tool right here is we can actually exaggerate his movement quite easily by just grabbing an edge like this one, and maybe he's just pulling his arm up to give this command. So his robe is doing something, right? It's moving. So we're gonna have to find that shape, and by dragging parts of him out and finding the right way to turn things around, we can find a new shape. And you can see that the bevel immediately finds this crease in the cloak right there, which is really handy because that gives you a very simple way to create a shape that isn't even really there, but suddenly it is. And I think this needs to move in a little bit like so. And it really helps to look at miniatures that maybe Games Workshop has done or other sellers of miniatures, and just look at how they do. Yeah, how do they do cloaks, and what is it that stands out about those cloaks? What makes it work? And you can really try and mimic that. That's what helped me in the first place, just to look at how other people have done it in the past. And I know this isn't the perfect shape, but that's fine. It does give us a good starting position to start from. And as you can see, the basis of it is still very low poly. So that gives us a lot to work with, if you will, very easily.
It shouldn't crash your laptop if you're running on a laptop.
There's a few things you need to bear in mind. That it does get a little sluggish if you turn up the subdivision too high. It can make your computer a little slow. If you don't have a lot of CPU, then it's best to keep it down, because you don't really need it to be real high to get the shape. And you can always crank it up once you've finished it and once you're satisfied with the end position of the cape or cloak or whatever. Do you guys have any questions about this step?
For 3D printing, is I'm assuming the arm, that left arm is going to be printed attached to the body, yeah?
Yeah, so this arm will come included to the body, but the other arm will be separate. Yeah. It's always good to find these things. Sometimes it's best to make this separate, and other times it's better to find a way to print it in one go. And that's if you are going to print it in one go, and that's a good question of you. That's why I am making sure that there's a lot of overlap within the miniature, so that it's touching other parts very strongly, so it's actually easy for the 3D printer to continue without needing any supports.
Yeah, you don't want voids just appearing.
Yeah.
It's not spotted when you're pre-supporting, or when the pre-supporter was pre-supporting.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think the next step.
I'm not sure if this is the place to discuss it with an but I'm working on a power fist at the moment. Would that be something you would want to get a hold of soonish? That's something that you could include on this model as an option.
Well, things like that is always cool, of course, but
Radio.
I don't think really a lot of people would spend too much war gear options on this guy, because, like I said, he's usually either used in a small match, or if you're going to go with an allied detachment of Space Marines, which is going to be quite small, but you do want to bring a rite of war.
Okay.
So I don't think many people would spend a lot of points on this guy's war gear. But it's always cool to be able to, of course, yeah, if you do want to. I think the thickness of the robe is quite good. I'm not too satisfied. I think the edge is a little too hard, and this is why I said the bevel modifier is nice, because we can still play around with this. I'm going to change this up to 2, like 0.2 instead of 0.1. And you'll see that the edge becomes a little smoother, which I think works a little better for the cloth. What do you guys think of this shape? Does it need something else, or?
Maybe some kind of flowing out the back.
So you want it to flow
like
over here?
Yeah, it's like some kind of small.
Yeah, as if it's affected by the exhaust pipes of the power pack.
Yeah, that kind of idea.
So this is making it wiggle a little bit.
Yes.
Okay, let's see if we can do that. So maybe move this in a little bit, that is being pushed in, and we could exaggerate this one a little bit, moving it out like so. And here we can add an extra, what is it called? An edge, by connecting these two, connect the vertex path between these two. Just right click, and that gives us a little bit more control here again to maybe
Cool.
copy this behavior over here. Move this around a little bit. And this needs to go in, like so. I'm not too satisfied with this, so I'm going to add another vertex over here by subdividing it. And this gives me again some more control. You do have to be careful though with this modifier. You can get some ugly results here and there, but it might help to move this around a little bit, see? So that it becomes a little smoother. But that's just experimenting with the tools you're using. I think it's a good idea to connect these two. So that gives a little bit of control again. So this is how it really helps. That's actually nice. So now we're getting, just by experimenting with the shape, you can see you can find another shape that wasn't there, but it's actually working quite well. See?
Cool.
Yeah. So now we've got some flows going on, but I think we can most definitely work from here. I think we've got a nice shape so far.
I think maybe soften that middle one because we've got quite a strong W shape forming.
Yeah, but that's fine at this step.
Would that be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, we're over exaggerating the shape for now. And
That makes sense.
it helps us to get a good over exaggerated shape to start from. I think I'm actually going to apply this solidify for now, which will give us a little bit more control over some other vertices, like this one over here is in a very nice spot. So now we can move this around. So only ever apply something if you're satisfied with what you've got so far. But I mean, that's probably preaching to the choir, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, I know the pain.
And I think this one would work well with the connection. Oh, connect vertex path over here. So we get a little bit more of a smooth curve. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Move this down a little bit. I think I'm pretty satisfied with the general shape. So what I usually do at this point is I'll duplicate this just in case. And by pressing that was just Ctrl D and then escape, so it will snap into its original position. And then I'll move this one to a hidden collection. This one is just called bits. So I have sort of a backup, if you will, if I mess this up completely. So what you can then do, by the way, I've turned on one of the, what's it called? You've got the, in edit mode, you can get the preferences, and for your modifiers, there's one, the modifier tools. If you've activated this, you get this little extra over here. And sometimes you have something that's got a lot of stacked modifiers, and you can actually press apply all, and it will apply all of them in one button. Even if you have like 12 objects selected that all have modifiers, it will apply all of the modifiers on all of the selected objects, which is really quick. And it saves a lot of workflow. So now we've got a base shape. To work with this, I'm going to add a multiress to it. And I'm going to subdivide it a couple of times. And you can't really overdo it. I think I'm going to do it 4 steps. Yeah. So now it becomes really smooth, as you can see. And now it's already looking a little bit more fancy, like a proper rope. The nice part about using a multiress is that it actually keeps the old vertices, if you will. So it's still pretty low poly. This will make it very easy to work with. You do have to bear in mind that if you're going to move, for example, if you want to move this out a little bit, which I want to do because it's a little bit strong into the shoulder pad over here, that you only have these vertices to work with. So I'm going to go into X-ray modus for a second here, and then I think it's nice to activate the curve over here, and then we can drag this out a little bit. By scrolling on the mouse wheel, you can control how much it is affecting around you, so make it a little bit bigger. And as you can see, this gives us a little bit of control to find the shape a little bit better. And I think we need to do, no, that's pretty good actually. So that has me a little bit more satisfied already. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into sculpt mode, into sculpting on top here. It's going to snap to a different viewport. And you're going to want to make sure that in your settings here, wait, I'm clicking the wrong button. Yeah, in our settings here, that you don't have mirror on, because by default, I think that's by default on the x-axis, which is nice if you're like sculpting a face or something and you want the eyes to be symmetrical. But on a cloak like this, it's absolutely useless, so you don't want it to be on. So double check if this is on or off. Because if it's on, it's going to find, as you can see, it's going to find two dots on the x-axis where it's going to apply both of these. See? And you don't want that to happen. Oh, it's still in the wrong setting. Okay. So I had one of the settings was the fall off was set to constant, and I needed it on smooth, of course. So that was going wrong. I was using it as a stencil. What you can do here now is you can use your brush tool, if you will, to find the natural shape of the flow of the miniature, and we can find some parts, like you said, this looks a little strong and this edge is maybe a little strong. If you still feel that way, right now you can smoothen it out. So we can select one of these tools like smooth and smoothen these corners. I think flatten is a little bit better here. Oh, that's creating a bit of a bump, so that's not good. But you can definitely find some tools to smoothen this out a little bit more. Maybe increase the strength a little bit more. There we go. Or you could even select a tool like elastic deform and just push the point that you have there in a little bit, which is even faster. Yeah, so fast.
I'm shocked by that. Yeah.
So with this selected, there's a couple of things that are...
Check the gap between the shoulder pad and the cloak. It looks like there's a bit of a hole.
Yeah, a little bit, but this won't affect printing too much. So
Okay.
And here it's looking a little bit rubbish, that it's into the shoulder pad a little too much, so let's move that out a bit. I think I want to actually move this a little bit more over here, so just drag it out. And that's the elastic deform tool, which is really handy for this sort of thing. I think this is a bit too high. Oh, so you could also just drag this down a little bit, if you will. And this is a little too strong, this corner over here, so let's drag that in like so. So now we have these natural flows that we've created, and I want to exaggerate them a little bit. So we're going to grab the draw tool, but we're going to set it to minus, so we can push in a little bit over here. And give it a little bit more shape. And over here, I think it's a nice flow like so. So let's find these over here. And then we switch to plus again. And let me zoom in a little bit. By zooming in, you actually get a little bit more control, because the size of your brush stays the same. So if you zoom in, you actually get a little bit more detailed brush. So you can add a layer like so. Maybe do this thrice. And you can really see the shape starting to come in. See? And it's just as easy as this, just finding the natural flow of what cloth would do. And it really helps to just look. Maybe it actually pictures of cloth. Maybe you find a GW model where you like the cloak really much. So find something like this to give you some inspiration. And here I want to exaggerate this shape a little bit more. And I think it might be nice to have a diagonal shape in here like so. And I'm going to switch to minus to accentuate this one a little bit on both sides. See?
I love that.
And it really helps to use sort of opposite shapes. It's very natural for that to happen, and it's very pleasing to the eye. And we're still just exaggerating shapes because it's going to be a miniature, so you have to exaggerate what's going on a little bit. You can't go too detailed because that won't look nice. This is a little bit of a complicated piece, so I think what I'm going to do is switch to plus again, zooming in a little bit so I can get a little bit more detail. I think this would be a nice shape, like so. Actually, that's not working, so I'm going to Ctrl Z that. So maybe we're going to continue this one. So you can give some things a few tries, and I think this works better. And like I said, if you feel that this corner has become too strong, you can always go into a smoothing brush and just smoothen this out a little bit. But I think it's looking quite well. And if you're satisfied with this step, then the next step is making it even more saturated. So you're going to go to the Draw Sharp tool, set it to plus, and we're going to find the middle ground, if you will, of these creases we've created, and we're going to exaggerate them even more, but just the centerpiece. This will give someone to put any painter to give a highlight to. So you're just going to drag these out like so. It can be a little smoother. Let me try again. There we go. So you're going to find these creases, and sometimes it actually really works to add even more detail. So you might want to go minus and halfen this one. This is too strong, let me zoom out. So we're going to halfen this one and then go to plus and then double it out. So we're going to find the same shape but making it even more obvious. But I actually think this is too much, so we're going to leave it as it was. I Ctrl Z a couple of times.
Yeah.
Because it's quite a small model. But I'm just showing you guys, you can really go crazy with this. But be mindful, like I said, it's going to be a miniature, so you don't want to go too overboard. So let's find this one. There we go. That's not perfect. Let's go again. And have a couple of goes at this. You're not going to get it perfect in one go. I'm actually using a stylus, not a mouse, which makes it a little bit easier to just draw shapes. And then you can find all of these. This is not too good, a little smaller, yeah. And if you're not too satisfied, if these edges over here are too hard, go to smooth and smoothen that out a little bit. See? And just go over all of these shapes that you've done. And then quite quickly you'll find yourself with a nice looking robe. And actually you can see by moving around, it looks a little bit more low poly. That's because I've got one of the settings for the multi-resolution is that if you move, it becomes a little bit more low poly, which makes it easier for Blender to calculate what's going on the screen. So I've got that activated. That's why you see this deformation happening when I move around, but it's not actually there. So if you've got a computer that's struggling a little bit with these settings, then be sure you turn that on. I'm thinking we've pretty much gotten the shape. It looks a little too strong here and there, so let's smoothen that out. And what also happens is here and there you'll get shapes that will push out a little too much. Like over here I don't like this, and over here it's become a little too bumpy. So grab the elastiform again and just drag them in like so. And that's just something that happens by using the draw tool. So that's something you're gonna have to fix later on, but you'll get the hang of that, finding these spots and fixing them up. But I think actually we have a pretty nice cloak thingy right now. The only thing we don't have is the inside, which can be a little difficult to get to. So that's why I've got the body in a different collection. So you can actually turn it off and have a little bit more control over the inside of this. I think this looks a little strong, so let's smoothen that out a little bit. There we go. And on the inside you can do the same thing, and sometimes it helps to look what you've done on the other side and then sort of duplicate what you've done on the inside a little bit. And the inside isn't as important, but you don't want to ignore it, I guess, because it does happen on both sides, of course. So you're going to want to find these shapes. So you do give them a little bit of attention. And it doesn't have to be too much, like I said. But it does help people to have something to work with. People are not going to get too fuzzy about what's going on in here, but this is still very easily seen, so you're going to want to do something with this. Oh, let's set it to plus. There we go. And find these shapes, and that's a little too much. Smoothen that out again. There we go. And that's basically it. And there you go. Now you've got a nice, smooth looking cloak. And actually, if we go back into our layout, you will see if I go into edit mode that it's still this low poly model. But it has become completely detailed. But this, what we've done in the sculpting mode is sort of saved, by lack of better word, into the multi-resolution. So if you were to remove this multi-res, it's gone. So let's Ctrl-Z that. So just so you know how this works. So all of the deformation we've been doing hasn't been done to the actual model. It has been done to the multi-resolution of the model. So it's all in this modifier. And that's actually what makes it a little bit easy to work with, because it doesn't become so strenuous for your computer to handle, if you will. There's a few things going on that I'm not too particular about, like this. There's a little bit of a fin going on here, which is because of the what's it called again? We had not the multi-res, but the subdivision has done this, and that's not looking too nice. So if we go back into sculpt mode, you can find this spot and then use this tool again to sort of drag it in like so. And this will remove this quite easily without being too invasive on the shape. And I think it happened. Oh, here we have got some problem. Let's see if we can fix that. Well, this happens sometimes. Be mindful of that when you're modeling I forgotten to check about that. This is what the subdivision has done. Basically, it dragged one face over another, and that gets a bit messy. And now this will get fixed once we put it up into 3D Builder again. But you can avoid this by double checking your model and moving the vertices around a little bit. It's pretty hard to fix at this point. I don't think I can really do anything about it right now. But it won't cause too much trouble printing. Let's fix this one. So be sure that if you're not doing a tutorial like me, and you can take your sweet time about it, double check if this is happening, so you don't have these issues, if you will. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Just getting rid of this weird thing that was going on as well. Smoothing it out. There you go. It's going to be very tiny on your miniature, so it's not going to cause any issues, but be mindful of it when you're creating stuff. This is what happens when you stack a lot of modifiers on top of each other. You could get some issues like this. So this is a good example of what can go wrong. But yeah, overall, I think I'm pretty satisfied with this end result. What do you guys think?
I think it looks awesome.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, good to hear. Do you guys?
It's safe to say that it is safe to say that you're quite a bit better than me.
I mean, it's not a question about being better. I mean, this is just being at it longer. So this is stuff you can learn and try and experiment with. But it does help if you've got some background. I do have an education in game design, and before that I went to the cartoon school in Amsterdam for drawing comics. And that does help with understanding how stuff fits together, if you will, how you can find, because actually this exaggeration for miniatures, you would do the same thing on a comic character. Like, you're gonna have to exaggerate what's happening on a cloak, even in a comic book. So
Like clothes and a costume.
yeah, so that is skills that do, those are skills that do overlap, yeah. And that can be very handy, so definitely.
It's a learned skill, so anyone can pick it up with time.
Yeah, I think so. And don't get discouraged if you don't get it right in one go. I mean, if you look at my first capes that I made, they're not going to be as good looking as this. So yeah, just keep trying, and have a go at it is what I always say. Just if you don't try, you don't know if it's going to work or not. Yeah. Also, one more tip, I guess, which is very handy. This is also why I made. This is also why I made the copy. If you, till example, want to make a loincloth as well, then it's nice to have this in the bits section. We have this copy that we had, right? So this one. Oh. And if you've got let me check again, you've got one of the tools. If you go to Edit, Preferences, and let's type in Copy, you have the Interface Copy Attributes menu. If you turn this on, I always have this on. Normally, if you press Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, it will just make a copy. But if you've got this turned on, you're going to get a menu. If you've got two objects selected, and make sure that your object that has modifiers is the active, the yellow colored model. If I now press Ctrl-C, I get a whole bunch of options. I can copy its location, I can copy its rotation, but more importantly, I can copy its modifiers. So we've been searching around for the right modifiers, and we've got them, and now it's very easy to just copy and paste them on this guy. All we are missing right now is the solidify that was on top. So let's add that back. And with very little effort, we've got a shape that we can work with that has the same modifiers that we were using on the other cloak. So now very easily we can get a shape going like a loincloth without too much effort. See?
The fun can begin again. Cool. Just as easy as that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all almost ready already.
Exactly.
I know. I'm just thinking that.
And that's why I wanted to give you guys this tip.
A loincloth in 30 seconds.
Because we've done all the work already.
Yeah.
Huh? We've already figured out the right modifiers. That's why I wanted to give you guys this tip. Because this just makes it real easy. And now you can get into sculpt mode again. Get the shape right. But yeah, I already taught you guys how to do that. So all I can say is have a go at it. Do you guys have any more questions?
Not right now, but.
Check out the stream chat. Rate my fur.